It's great that you've come to my channel. Find a quiet place, stretch out comfortably, and listen to the emotions of life.
Have you ever found yourself in a season where it seems like God is distant and every prayer you utter seems to go unanswered? It's easy to feel lost when your heart cries out to God, yet all you seem to hear is silence. In these moments, doubt can easily creep in, causing you to question whether God is truly listening to your pleas. You may find yourself wondering, why isn't God responding to my prayers? Has He turned a deaf ear to my cries? These are natural questions, especially when you're standing in the valley of uncertainty, where the weight of unanswered prayers can feel overwhelming. But what if this silence is not a sign of God's absence, but rather an invitation to trust Him more deeply? What if this waiting period is a crucial part of your spiritual growth, preparing you for something greater than you could ever imagine? The Bible tells us in James 1 verses 2-4, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Could it be that through this silence, God is refining your faith, strengthening your perseverance, and drawing you closer to His heart? Don't let this season of waiting discourage you. Instead, see it as a transformative time where God is molding you, even when you can't see the full picture yet. Stay with me, and together we will explore how patience in the midst of God's silence can lead to a deeper understanding of His plans and a stronger, unshakable faith. Psalm 27 verse 14 invites us to wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage, wait for the Lord. This simple yet profound verse encourages us to recognize that waiting is not a passive act, but rather an active exercise of faith. It's a reminder that God's timing is perfect, and His plans for us are always good. Yet, in our human frailty, it can be challenging to understand this divine timing, especially when it seems like our prayers are met with silence. But we must remember that silence does not equate to inactivity on God's part. In fact, during these periods of waiting, God is often orchestrating something far greater than we can perceive. Consider the story of Joseph, a man whose life seemed to be a series of delays and setbacks. Sold into slavery by his own brothers, falsely accused and imprisoned, Joseph's life appeared to be going in the opposite direction of his dreams. Yet, during those dark years, God was intricately working behind the scenes, preparing Joseph for a purpose that would change not only his life but also the lives of countless others. When the time was right, God elevated Joseph to a position of great power, fulfilling the dreams that had once seemed so distant. Joseph's story reminds us that even when we feel buried under the weight of our circumstances, God is at work, preparing us for something far beyond our imagination. The analogy of a seed buried in the ground further illustrates this truth. Once a seed is planted, it disappears from sight, hidden beneath the soil, seemingly forgotten. But beneath the surface, a transformation is taking place. The seed begins to break apart, roots start to spread, and new life starts to form. Eventually, what was once unseen breaks through the soil and grows into something vibrant and fruitful. Similarly, when we feel hidden or forgotten in our waiting, God is cultivating something deep within us. He is developing our character, strengthening our faith, and preparing us for the harvest that is to come. This period of waiting, though challenging, is not wasted time. It's a season of growth and preparation. Imagine a master artist working on a canvas. As the artist begins, the strokes of color may seem random and without meaning, but with each careful addition, a beautiful masterpiece begins to emerge. God is the master artist of our lives. Even when we see only the beginnings of His work, or perhaps nothing at all, we can trust that He is creating something beautiful. Each prayer, each moment of waiting, is a brushstroke in the grand design He has for us. It may not always make sense to us, but God sees the bigger picture. His perspective is eternal, and His timing is flawless. In Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1, we are reminded that He has made everything beautiful in its time. This verse reassures us that God's timing is not just about when things happen, but also about how they happen. Sometimes the delays we experience are not denials, but divine alignments. God is orchestrating circumstances, people, and events in ways that are beyond our comprehension. Just because we don't see immediate results does not mean that nothing is happening. God's timing ensures that everything comes together at the perfect moment, revealing His plan in a way that exceeds our expectations. Let's consider the story of Abraham and Sarah, who waited years for the promise of a child. Their journey was marked by moments of doubt and impatience. Yet God had a specific time for Isaac to be born. This timing was not just for their benefit, but was part of a greater plan that would unfold throughout history. God's timing is intentional and purposeful. He knows what we need when we need it, and how it fits into His broader plan. Trusting His timing means believing that He has not forgotten us, and that He is carefully orchestrating every detail of our lives for our good. In our seasons of waiting, it's easy to become frustrated or anxious about what hasn't happened yet. But instead of focusing on the delay, we should focus on what God is doing in our hearts and lives right now. He may be teaching us patience, developing our faith, or preparing us for something greater than we can imagine. The delay is not a denial, it is God's way of aligning everything perfectly, so that when the answer comes, it is more than we ever hoped for. The period of waiting is not just about patience, it's about preparation. God uses this time to shape us, refine us, and prepare us for the future He has planned. Just as a musician practices diligently before a performance, we are being prepared for the roles we are to play in God's kingdom. Waiting is not easy, but it is a powerful process that transforms us. It strengthens our faith, deepens our trust in God, and equips us for the challenges and blessings that lie ahead. In the same way that a puzzle requires patience as each piece is carefully placed, our lives require patience as God fits each piece together. Some pieces fall into place quickly, while others take time. If we try to force a piece into the wrong spot, the picture becomes distorted. But when we trust God's timing and allow Him to place each piece where it belongs, the picture of our lives becomes clear and beautiful. As we navigate these seasons of waiting, it's crucial to remember that God's work behind the scenes is perfectly aligned with His timing. This alignment is not random, it's orchestrated with precision, just like a skilled conductor leading an orchestra. Each instrument, each note, is played at the right moment to create a beautiful symphony. Similarly, God's timing in our lives is precise and purposeful. Understanding this gives us the confidence to trust in His plan, even when the answers we seek seem delayed. So when you find yourself in a season of waiting, take heart. God is at work, even when you cannot see it. He is arranging circumstances, preparing people, and aligning events in ways that are far beyond our understanding. His timing is perfect, and His plan for you is good. Trust in the One who holds your future, and take courage in the knowledge that He is always working for your good. In closing, remember that the waiting season is not just a pause in your journey, it's an essential part of it. It's a time when God is actively working on your behalf, shaping your character, building your faith, and preparing you for the future He has in store. Each moment of waiting is a step closer to the fulfillment of God's promises. So be strong, take courage, and wait for the Lord. He is faithful, and His timing is always perfect. As we express our gratitude to God for guiding us through these seasons of waiting, let us also acknowledge His constant presence in our lives. Even when we cannot see the full picture, we can trust that He is always at work, creating something beautiful in us and through us. Let our hearts be filled with faith and hope, knowing that God's plans for us are far greater than we can imagine. In this trust, we find peace, strength, and the courage to continue on the path He has laid before us. May we always remember that our waiting is not in vain, for in due time, we will reap the harvest of all that God has been preparing for us. The journey of faith is often marked by seasons of waiting, those moments when time seems to stretch endlessly, and our hearts yearn for answers that seem out of reach. Yet, these waiting periods are not voids of inactivity. They are sacred spaces where God molds and refines us, shaping our character and deepening our relationship with Him. As the prophet Isaiah reminds us, "But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." Isaiah 40:31. This verse echoes the profound truth that waiting on God is not a passive act, but an active engagement in trust and faith. In the crucible of waiting, our character is refined as gold in fire. God uses this time to peel away the layers of our insecurities, doubts, and fears, replacing them with unwavering faith and trust in His sovereignty. This season is a divine invitation to let our roots of faith sink deeper into the fertile soil of God's promises. Just as a tree grows stronger and more resilient as its roots delve deeper into the earth, so too does our faith become more steadfast and mature through the trials of waiting. The Apostle Paul captures this process beautifully in Romans 5 verses 3-4. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. It is in this hope that we find the strength to endure, knowing that the growth occurring within us is preparing us for the greater purposes God has in store. Patience, a virtue often tested in the waiting, is not merely the ability to wait, but to wait with a heart full of peace and trust in God's perfect timing. This patience is not born out of our strength, but is a fruit of the Spirit, cultivated by the Holy Spirit within us. As we learn to trust in God's timing, we realize that delays are not denials, but divine appointments set by a loving Father who knows exactly what we need and when we need it. The story of Abraham and Sarah is a poignant reminder of this truth. Despite their long wait for the promised child, they learned that God's timing is impeccable. For still the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end, it will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come, it will not delay. Habakkuk 2 verse 3. This verse encourages us to hold on to our faith, even when the wait seems interminable, trusting that God's promises are always fulfilled in His perfect time. The waiting season is also a time when perseverance is forged within us. It is easy to grow weary and lose heart when answers seem delayed, but it is in these moments that God is building within us perseverance that will sustain us through the trials of life. This perseverance is not just about enduring difficulties, but about allowing those difficulties to shape us into the image of Christ. James 1 verses 2-4 urges us, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." Each trial, each moment of waiting, is a building block in the foundation of our faith, drawing us closer to God and preparing us for the work He has called us to do. One of the most challenging aspects of waiting is understanding God's silence. It is easy to equate silence with absence, but the truth is that God is never absent, even when He seems silent. His silence is often a test of our trust, an opportunity to lean into Him more deeply and to discover the richness of His love in new ways. The story of Job is a powerful example of this. Despite the silence and the immense suffering he endured, Job declared, "Though He slay me, yet will I hope in Him." Job 13 verse 15. This declaration of faith in the face of God's silence teaches us that our hope is not in the answers we seek, but in the God who holds us in his hands. God's silence is not a void, but a space where we can experience his presence in the most profound way. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus modeled the ultimate submission to God's will. Faced with unimaginable suffering, he prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." Luke 22, verse 42. This moment of surrender teaches us that even in God's silence, we must submit to his will, trusting that his plan is unfolding perfectly, even when it is not evident to us. Submission is not about resignation, but about aligning our will with God's, believing that his ways are higher than our ways and his thoughts higher than our thoughts. Isaiah 55, verses 8 to 9. It is in this submission that we find peace, knowing that we are in the hands of a loving Father who is orchestrating every detail of our lives for our good and his glory. As we wait, we must also be open to the reality that God's answers to our prayers may not align with our expectations. His perspective is eternal, and he sees the bigger picture that we cannot. What we perceive as a setback may be a setup for a greater miracle, a divine redirection that leads us to a path of greater fulfillment and joy. The story of Joseph is a testament to this truth. Sold into slavery by his brothers, Joseph could have easily succumbed to despair. Yet he remained faithful, trusting in God's plan even when it seemed his dreams were shattered. In the end, Joseph recognized God's hand in every twist and turn of his life, declaring to his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Genesis 50, verse 20. Joseph's story reminds us that God's answers, though they may differ from our expectations, are always for our ultimate good. Finally, we must recognize that the delays and different outcomes we experience in response to our prayers are often part of God's divine timing and protection. What may seem like a disappointment is often a divine detour that shields us from unseen dangers or prepares us for a blessing greater than we could have imagined. The Israelites' journey through the wilderness is an illustration of this principle. Though they wandered for 40 years, it was not without purpose. God was preparing them, teaching them dependence on him, and protecting them from the challenges they were not yet ready to face. Deuteronomy 8, verses 2 to 3 reflects this, saying, "Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years, to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. He humbled you, causing you to hunger and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord." God's delays are never without purpose, and his detours are always with our protection and growth in mind. The waiting period is not a wasted time, but a time of profound growth, refinement, and preparation. It is in these moments that God draws us closer, deepening our trust in him and building within us the character and perseverance needed for the journey ahead. As we submit to his will, trust in his timing, and remain open to his answers, we can find peace and hope, knowing that God is at work in our lives, even in silence. The words of Psalm 27, verse 14 encapsulate this beautifully. "Wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord." May we find the strength to wait with patience, the courage to trust in God's plan, and the faith to believe that he is leading us to a place of greater fulfillment and joy, all for his glory and our good. Life's journey is often filled with unexpected twists and turns, where our plans are disrupted and our prayers seem unanswered. In these moments, it's crucial to remember that God's plan is perfect, even when it doesn't align with our own expectations. The Bible reminds us in Isaiah 55, verses 8 to 9, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord." As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways and my thoughts than your thoughts. This verse sets the stage for understanding that God's plans are far beyond our comprehension, and His answers to our prayers are rooted in His boundless love for us. Trusting in God's plan means surrendering our desires and expectations to Him, knowing that His will is always superior. When our prayers are not answered in the way we hope, it's not a sign of neglect, but an indication that God has something greater in store for us. Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6 advises, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." This trust is not passive, but an active, living faith that rests in the assurance that God is in control. It challenges us to step back and let go of our need to control every aspect of our lives, allowing God to lead us along paths we may not have chosen but are ultimately for our good. Often, God's answers to our prayers come in forms we do not anticipate. The unexpected can be daunting, but it is in these moments that our faith is truly tested and strengthened. Romans 8 verse 28 gives us hope, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Embracing the unexpected means accepting that God is shaping our lives in ways that are ultimately beneficial, even if the journey differs from what we had envisioned. It requires a shift in perspective, from seeing obstacles as setbacks to recognizing them as divine redirections towards a greater purpose. Prayer is more than just a request to God, it is a vital lifeline that connects us to His divine will. In moments when it feels like nothing is happening, persistent prayer becomes an act of faith and commitment. Jesus teaches us the importance of persistence in Luke 18 verses 1 to 8, the parable of the persistent widow. This widow, despite facing repeated rejection, continued to seek justice from a judge until she received it. Jesus uses this story to illustrate that if a judge who is indifferent can be moved by persistence, how much more will our loving Father respond to our persistent prayers? Persistent prayer is not about wearing God down, but about demonstrating our trust in His timing and our commitment to His will. It shows that we believe in His promises, even when they are not immediately visible. God's timing is a concept that often challenges our patience. We live in a world that demands instant gratification, yet God operates on an eternal timeline. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11 reminds us He has made everything beautiful in its time. This scripture assures us that every prayer, every act of faith, is like a seed planted in the ground. While we may not see immediate results, we can trust that in God's perfect timing, those seeds will bear fruit. Our challenge is to remain steadfast, believing that God's timing is always perfect, even when it doesn't align with our schedule. Relentless faith is characterized by a refusal to give up, no matter how long the wait or how difficult the journey is. The parable of the persistent widow in Luke 18 verses 1 to 8 is a powerful example of this kind of faith. Her relentless pursuit of justice, despite constant rejection, mirrors the kind of faith we are called to have in our prayers. Jesus used this parable to encourage His followers to always pray and not lose heart. If an unjust judge can be swayed by persistence, how much more will a just and loving God respond to our relentless faith? This story serves as a reminder that our prayers are not in vain and that God, in His perfect timing, will answer. One of the profound effects of persistent prayer is the strengthening of our faith. As we continue to pray, even in the face of silence or delay, our dependence on God deepens. This process refines our faith, making it more resilient and unwavering. James 1 verses 3 to 4 tells us, "Because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance, let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Through persistent prayer, we grow in our relationship with God, learning to trust Him more fully, especially during times when His ways are difficult to understand. In all of this, it is essential to hold onto the truth of God's unwavering faithfulness. Lamentations 3 verses 22 to 23 proclaims, "Because of the Lord's great love we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning, great is your faithfulness." Even when circumstances are challenging, and it seems like our prayers are going unanswered, God's faithfulness remains constant. His promises are reliable, and his love for us is unchanging. This faithfulness is the foundation of our hope and assurance, knowing that God will fulfill his promises in his perfect time and way. Reflecting on past moments when God has been faithful is a powerful way to strengthen our faith in the present. The Bible is filled with examples of God's faithfulness, from delivering the Israelites out of Egypt to providing for them in the wilderness. In our own lives, we have personal testimonies of God's provision, protection, and guidance. Psalm 77 verses 11 to 12 encourages us to remember God's deeds. "I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago. I will consider all your works and meditate on all your mighty deeds." By recalling these moments, we are reminded that the same God who was faithful before is faithful now, and his faithfulness is a present reality. Patience in the face of God's silence is perhaps one of the greatest challenges in our faith journey. It can be easy to mistake silence for neglect or indifference, but in truth, God's silence is often an invitation to deepen our trust in him. Isaiah 40 verse 31 provides comfort, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles, they will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Trusting in God's silence means believing that he is at work, even when we cannot see it. It is an opportunity to grow in patience, knowing that God's timing is perfect and that he is always working for our good. In moments of waiting, prayer becomes our source of strength and comfort. It is during these times that we must hold onto the belief that God hears every prayer and is working behind the scenes, even when we cannot see it. Philippians 4 verses 6 to 7 advises us, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Prayer not only brings our requests before God, but also brings us into his presence, where we can find peace and assurance in his perfect plan. As we reflect on these truths, let us be encouraged to continue in our prayers, trusting in God's perfect plan, timing, and faithfulness. Let us be relentless in our faith, embracing the unexpected with confidence that God is shaping our lives according to his divine purpose. Remember to reflect on God's past faithfulness as a source of strength in the present, and to be patient in his silence, knowing that he is always at work. In this journey of faith, let us also encourage others by spreading messages of hope and faith. If this content has touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to help spread these messages to others who may need encouragement. Let us continue to support one another in our faith journeys, trusting that God is leading us all toward his perfect plan. May this message inspire you to trust in God's plan, embrace the unexpected, persist in prayer, and rely on his unwavering faithfulness. In every situation, know that God is with you, working all things together for your good. Let your faith be relentless, your prayers persistent, and your trust in God unshakable.